Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So nice to be here with you today. So that's a big step for me. We are starting today the pre-launching of the book. Now you'll be able to pre-order the book on many platforms and on the ebook, and in the coming days also the book, which will be released on January 22nd. So this has been a beautiful journey for me. It's a 10-year journey for thinking about this book and then writing it. It's a journey that brings together my spiritual journey, my reflection as a social scientist, and my experience as a sustainability professional. So as I tell in this book, my path started in Mexico some 20 years ago with a contact with an encounter with native spirituality. And it really convinced me that inner development is not only a key condition for human flourishing, but also a very important key for our social evolution. So this spiritual path went on with my interest in many wisdom traditions that I bring in this book. And for the last 6 years, I've been living with my family next to Plum Village, the Buddhist monastery of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, here in the southwest of France. I've also done, because this encounter with native spirituality really reconnected me to Mother Earth and myself. I really wanted to work for Mother Earth. So I did a PhD in ecological economics. And I was studying a program of forest conservation, payments for environmental services in Costa Rica. And this study really helped me see that it was a completely different story from what was usually told about this program. There was the idea that these payments would allow to make forest conservation more profitable than cutting it, and then appealing to some Homo economicus, which thinks about economic gains, about their economic gains. And I thought discovered it was really a different story. It was more rewarding, the intrinsic motivation for these people to conserve the forest. And this made me think that, and the key is not only to make it financially attractive, but rather how we can change the mindsets of people so that they can become intrinsically motivated to conserve the forest. And this is also more and more what I'm focusing on in my professional journey in the field of sustainability, recognizing that our development paradigm is so focused on economic growth, is so antagonistic to environmental conservation, that we really need a change of paradigm, a profound reorientation of our societies, of our priorities, and also the need to be able to transform people mindsets so that sustainability. Sorry, was I on mute?
Just for the last 3 seconds.
Okay, that's good. Reassuring. So yeah, and this is now what I'm starting to work, including within the United Nations Development Program on the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, where we are really trying to work on inner development as an enabler of sustainability. So that's just an introduction. So I'm really happy, you know, how these three fields, you know, the wisdom part, the science part, and also the practitioner, the professional. I think these are, you know, three really important dimensions to be able to bring together in this book. So, okay, I'll start the presentation now. So it seems we need a cultural evolution. So I would have said that maybe 20 years ago, it would have been maybe not so understood or heard. But now we have even leading organizations such as the United Nations Development Programme in its last Human Development Report that just say that nothing short of a wholesale shift in mindsets is needed to navigate the brave new world of the Anthropocene. And 20 years ago, already the Earth Charter was calling for a change of mind and heart for sustainability to be possible. So I believe this cultural evolution is of a spiritual nature. And why are we here? I think because we have developed over the last centuries, our technological power or economic power, we have transformed the Earth to the point that we are now in the Anthropocene, where we as humans are the main geological forces on Earth. And so this power has made our world much more complex also as we developed. And there has been an imbalance between this power and the wisdom that we need to make good use of it. We have not invested as much in developing our inner capacities or wisdom as we have into developing our external power. So this is what the Dalai Lama said. The fundamental problem is that at every level, we're giving too much attention to the external material aspects of life while neglecting moral ethics and inner values. Okay. Here we go. So indeed, we are focused on economic development. And this development path is now clearly obsolete. So when we were discussing the new roadmap for the Sustainable Development Goals, what became the Sustainable Development Goal, there was discussion on, you know, what should be this new development paradigm. And even the UN Secretary General at that time, Ban Ki-moon, said the old model is broken. We need to create a new one. And I think this is becoming each year more obvious. So why prioritizing economic development does no longer make so much sense? So we can look at the graph on the right here and see that, so we have how, you know, at the beginning when there is more income per capita, subjective well-being, grows quite fast. But when you reach a certain level of income, then growing income is no longer a very important lever for improving sustainable well-being. And that happens at a level where, you know, at a level of income where a lot of Latin American countries are, you know, for example, you can see right in the middle, the level of Argentina, Uruguay, etc. It does not make so much difference at this stage to have more income for our well-being. So we have to understand that this focus on economic growth is itself rooted in a cultural program, in some values. This is a program that has originated in the West and has now spread to different parts of the world with globalization. And it's really rooted in some values of Western modernity, like materialism, reductionism, individualism, utilitarianism, humanism, anthropocentrism. And together, these values have defined a kind of program for societies, which we could synthesize by saying mastering nature to fulfill all material needs. So this has been our main focus, we could say, for the last maybe 2 centuries. And this program has produced very good outcomes. We have enjoyed scientific, technological, economic development. All this is really good. There have been a recognition of the importance of individuality, human rights, democracy, which is very good also. But this program has created also some new problems. We are now facing a very deep ecological and social crisis, and more fundamentally also a human, moral, and spiritual crisis. So this program, this development model focused on economic growth, has reached its limits. So Charles Eisenstein called this program, this cultural program, the story of separation. So basically, he says like every society needs to bring some answers to key questions, what are we as human, where are we coming from, where are we going, etc. And together, he says that this program emphasized our separation from one another, from nature. Reductionism also separate everything in different parts, etc. And he says we are now moving towards a new story, which he called the story of interbeing, that we could sum up as thriving together as one Earth family. And this story is, of course, rooted in new science, new information that we are processing, and that gives us a different picture of the world, of ourselves, and our potential. So science indeed is now more and more telling us the story of a conscious, intelligent universe. So matter is not really dead, let's say, like in the materialism vision. It stresses the importance of our interconnection and of systems thinking to be able to articulate together these different parts. Or nature of interbeing, or the importance of community for flourishing in particular, and a different vision of what is to be for humans to flourish. It's not so much like having more money, more fame, more power, but rather expressing my gifts for the greater good. The humanistic vision started to be, was a bit emphasizing material needs of human, and now it can be deepen itself to also recognize the importance of the inner dimension, the spiritual nature of humans. And we are also more and more aware that we are not separated from nature, but rather are members of this Earth community, and that our fate as our share. So this new story, this new cultural programs calls also for a new development paradigm, a new vision for our societies. And there has been, I've started to say, numerous proposals on what could be this new development paradigm. And in general, there is, of course, the realization that it should be more sustainable, more qualitative, more human, and more integral. But beyond these different proposals, there is a general orientation that is often emphasized, which is moving from having towards being, or we could use different words. Human flourishing can be similar. Eudaimonia, to take a Greek word, and maybe we'll come back to that, or even self-actualization. And this shift from having to being is it's what I call a wisdom-based approach to politics, and one that is when I was doing some research for this book, I didn't want to create like a new vision, but rather propose something that everybody could recognize, could agree with. And so I found this sentence in the Earth Charter, which is a very important ethical declaration, and we could say with a lot of the wisdom perspective. And it say, when basic needs have been met, human development is primarily about being more, not having more. And this is really congruent with what sociologists like Engelhardt, which was managing the world value survey, so really the main reference in that field. And he said, we have observed an important cultural evolutions in what he called developed countries, let's say rich countries, over the last decades, from materialism to post-materialism, and more fundamentally from survival to self-expression. So we can understand, so sociologists tell us that the values, the group of values that are now more emphasized are related more to, in these developed countries, to self-expression, thus the term, the relevance of being. So the politics of being is this wisdom-based approach to politics, an approach that is also informed by science to support our conscious collective evolution. So it's, we can define it as politics which places being as our main collective goal, and not only goals, but also means. And I come back to that in the next slide. And when I say being, I mean the fulfillment of all beings, not only human beings. That's important. And being, a very simple approach to it is basically it's both our truest being, becoming who we are. I think that's a very fundamental human aspiration. And when we become who we are, we reflect more and more our relational or interbeing nature, and science more and more emphasize that relational human nature. And I mean also our highest being, so at the same time becoming the best version of ourselves, so which is developing our virtues or qualities. And you can see that this politics of being is very much in line with what a lot of philosophers, spiritual leaders have emphasized in the past. You know, when Aristotle was saying that the purpose of the good state was to help their citizens cultivate their virtues, and we could say in accordance with their true self, which is often say the definition of eudaimonia. It's exactly what the politics of being is about. So there is a lot of background and legitimacy, I would say, behind this concept. Well, the politics of being aims at aligning our institutions with our true reason to be here on Earth, becoming who we are, the best and most complete version of ourselves. And as we can see in the image on the right side of this page, this is a quote from the Bible that sits on the Rockefeller building in New York, I believe. Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of time. So bringing together this marriage of science and wisdom has been emphasized by many traditions as the key, an important key, because it basically brings two aspects of knowledge that are different. We could say one on the outer world and one of the inner world. So that's also coming together that have always been emphasized by many wisdom traditions. So when we are talking about this shift in consciousness, we often approach it from the bottom up. Let's say people will be able to somehow awaken, let's say, and start maybe some spiritual practices, etc. And then the societies or institutions will change. But there are not so many studies about how we can make that, how we can use the power of our institutions to reflect, to embody this evolution of consciousness in societies, and also to facilitate this evolution. So the idea is to create this virtuous circle by which institutions provide the right conditions for human development, for human flourishing, which includes, as we will see, inner development and the development of our wisdom, and then be able to, this wisdom would allow to adapt and refine institutions in to create this virtuous circle. So, and that is also, here is a quote from Elinor Ostrom, which is arguably the most influential thinker on institutions at the moment. And here's what she said when she was the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in economics. So she said, when receiving this Nobel Prize, she said, designing institutions to force or nudge entirely self-interested individuals to achieve better outcomes has been the major goal posited by policy analysts for governments to accomplish for much of the past half century. Extensive empirical research leads me to argue that instead, a core goal of public policy should be to facilitate the development of institutions that bring out the best in humans. So basically, we have been used to assume that our human nature is to be selfish. That is really at the core of the story of separation and an economic theory, you know, the Homo economicus. And by doing that, we are making this assumption more of a reality. So if we assume that we are selfish, we are enacting this human nature, and we could say somehow the worst in our human nature. And the conclusion of Elinor Ostrom that rather our institutions should bring out the best in humans. So as I said, being is not only the goal, being is also the mean. We need to walk the path, we need to walk this path, walk the talk, we could say. And each time we want to, our institutions we could say are there to help us respond to our needs and solve our basic problems, challenges we are facing. But they should do it by helping us at the same time cultivate the virtues or the qualities, the best in humans. So we cannot separate, as spiritual teachings have always emphasized, the end and the means. And by the way, there are some scientific studies that shows very clearly that we are maintained in this story of separation. We are maintaining this idea that we as humans are mainly selfish. And studies show that people, we ask people what are their values, etc. And the vast majority, 74%, for example, in this study in England, would emphasize, let's say, compassionate values rather than selfish values. But people tend to believe like, okay, I have these compassionate values, but others tend to have less. So we have, this study show that 77% of the people underestimated the number of people who responded they had these compassionate values. And why is that so? Is that because we live in a world and our institutions are framed according to this assumption. So they always reflect us this idea that we are separated, everyone think only of themselves, and we need to design our institution based on this is how the world works, and there is nothing to do about that. So definitely science is telling us that this view is largely overestimated. So an example of that in the field of justice. So in many countries, I think there the US is a clear example. The paradigm in this sector is retributive justice. So it says that justice is done when whoever breaks the law receives a proportional punishment in return. And this approach is now widely questioned in terms of efficiency and fairness because it has brought a systemic crisis that is very obvious in the US. For example, we have rising delays and costs of justice, mass incarceration, recidivism. It's really not working. The alternative paradigm is often, the main one is called restorative justice. So restorative justice is a non-adversarial process where the offender, the victim, and other stakeholders, the community, come together to have a very conscious dialogue focused on healing and reintegration. And we see that it performs very well, very high satisfaction rates from victims and offenders of this process. It can deal with many of the problems that the justice system needs to address. It has a potential to reduce the cost of doing justice and increase the response to crime efficiency. And it performs at least slightly better than conventional approaches in terms of reoffending. But more importantly, restorative justice is a process that helps whoever is involved to cultivate qualities, very important human qualities. It's a human technology that we can, because the performance of restorative justice depends a lot on these human capacities. So instead of refining, a system based on our instinct for retaliation, we can improve, and research tells us that the performance depends a lot about the human capacity. So we can invest in these human capacities to refine this human technology that is restorative justice. So it's about restorative justice is about our capacity to be really present in this process, to be able to connect, to have empathy with one another, to be able to understand, to cultivate our responsibility. Offenders, need to, in this process, are able to really see the heart of the victim. So all these human qualities can be cultivated in this restorative justice paradigm. So a theory of change. Okay, so why inner development, being, expressing our true nature, cultivating the best version of ourselves is so important for our societies. So right now we could say that our system, is, in particular our economic system, is based on the disconnection of individuals, which fuels consumerism, greed, workaholism, etc. And this has worked, has created capital accumulation, but also environmental and social destruction and human suffering. When these psychologists call this disconnection, the self-determination theory talks about extrinsic goals. So people prioritizing goals that are to receive positive evaluation of others, such through money, fame, image, conformity. And research show that those who prioritize these extrinsic goals tend to be have a much lower level of subjective well-being than those who do not. So on the other side, we have the experience of what is the ultimate spiritual realization that I've experienced that mystics tell us. And what they say, it's about unity. It's about being one with everything that is, or interbeing. We can use different words. And of course, when they experience that, then they want to be in service of the whole, serve others, nature, etc. So we may not experience this ultimate experience, but what it tells us is that direction is about nourishing three essential connections: to ourselves, to other humans, and to nature. And these connections, science tells us, are key for our happiness, and of course, are key for sustainability. If we really feel connected to one another and to nature, this is already a good inner basis to and willingness to really address the environmental and social crises we are facing. And by the way, science tells us also that those disconnected individuals who prioritize extrinsic goals are also those have attitudes and behaviors towards others, towards nature, which are largely more destructive, let's say. Okay, so I have, when I was doing this research, I have mapped where this perspective, emphasizing being, was showing up in different scientific fields and also different political policy initiatives. And I found out that there were people who were more into systemic, integral, and complex thinking, and they were doing were proposing some policy options through integral politics, for example. There was those often connecting to that because life is a living system, that emphasize that we need to harmonize ourselves also as societies with the way nature works. And it's at the basis of the buen vivir, or vivir bien, living well, in political philosophy and in South America, which has been in government, we could say, in countries such as Ecuador or Bolivia, or is also behind this commitment of China to become an ecological civilization. There are, of course, an important field of research that have emerged over the last decades around happiness. And in the field of politics, that has been led by Bhutan and its gross national happiness, which is a development paradigm that Bhutan uses. And more countries are using this happiness lens to steer their country's evolution. Like, for example, New Zealand now has a well-being budget, for example. There are also new field of science studying empathy, compassion, altruism, what I call love. And this translates also in some social change initiatives, such as the Charter for Compassion, in which we have local governments, cities that commit themselves to become compassionate cities, for example. There is the notion of a culture of peace. Peace studies have started in the 50s only. And now, in terms of policy proposal, we have this notion of a culture of peace, for which we have had UN resolution in 2000, if I remember well, and program of actions. We could call it also a culture of partnership. There is also people who believe in the power of mindfulness for social change. In the UK, we have had this wonderful report supported by MPs from different parties of what mindfulness could do for the country if applied in education, health, justice, and business. And the report is called UK Mindful Nation. And finally, there are those who are emphasize the need to pay more attention to the mystery that is around us everywhere and is often neglected by science. And they see that as a door to grow our consciousness, and by becoming more aware of how little we know and how wonderful and mysterious is our world. So I've realized that these we could call them values, and I call them spiritual values because to me they reflect what an awakened person look like. An awakened person is aware of our interconnection, can be full of life, happy, loving, peaceful, mindful, etc. So and here again there's a history in Western philosophy, for example, that really aligns with this vision. How we have defined good society since Plato and the Greek philosophy was a lot about around what we call the transcendentals: truth, goodness, and beauty. And when Christian theology emphasized them, it said that they were properties of being and were reflecting what God is. In the same way, Hegel, the German philosopher in the 18th, 19th century, said our world was, he regards history as moving towards the realization of human freedom, which he considers the essential quality of mind or spirit, what he called guides. And more recently, economic development has been also driven by this value of abundance or prosperity, but maybe seen only in a materialistic sense, while it has also a spiritual meaning. So all of these values together are the foundation of the politics of being. And these initiatives, this science, can tell us, what should be our priorities when our political priorities when we approach the challenges we face, and the question of the evolution of our societies. So in this book, I've proposed very concrete policy agendas in 9 sectors. And that was really important. I've mainly focused on policies that are already being implemented, just to show that it's, we tend, if we talk about, even spiritual evolution, or we tend to think of something that is very far away and a bit esoterical. But this is a very concrete agenda of policies that have been mainly tested successfully in different places. And it's about bringing them together in a coherent vision for our societies. So I call it a second stage, direct and indirect investment in human development. So direct, for example, if we bring more emphasis on inner development in education, or on mental health, for example, in the field of health, this is a direct investment in human development. Human development has focused, I take these 2 examples, because human development often focus on, having people get education and have access to healthcare. But this is a second stage, because we are emphasizing here the inner part of education and health, in that case. And it's also an indirect investment, because as I said, we need to, when we tackle our challenges, like for example, I took the example of justice. So we need to be able to maintain security, cohesion in a society. So we need to do justice. But we can do it in a way that cultivates our instinct for retaliation and the worst in us, or we can do it in a way that cultivates our human qualities. So there it's an indirect investment in human development. So basically we need to have to replace or complement traditional policies by policies that embody this being or interbeing paradigm, which cultivate our human, social, and natural potential. And what's important is that when we look at the discussions on the need for new paradigm within all these sectors, we realize they often stress solution that is coming from this interbeing paradigm, which is what we will be looking at now. So, of course, a very obvious emphasis is on childhood and family, because as psychologists well know, this is a major determinant of our capacity to flourish as adults and contribute positively to societies. So, for example, in case of public policies, the parental leaves are very important. We need parents to be able to be present, to offer a safe, healthy, loving, caring, and stimulating environment, which is what babies, children need for their development. So here we see that in the US, there is no federal policy on parental leaves, while in Sweden, which one of the countries that often perform best in many rankings on well-being, etc., they have 16 months to share where they receive 80% of their pay. So that can make a huge difference in terms of people being there for their baby as they start discovering the world and establish the foundations of their being in the world. And other options are parenting programs, and there also we have some science that tell us that parenting programs can make a difference when they are well designed, emphasizing in particular demandingness and responsiveness, which have been shown as key dimensions of successful parenting, and have been shown to support the development of adults that will be engaged in what we call eudaimonic pursuits, like developing the best in oneself. So that can really make, if we want to have this focus on being, that can really make a difference. A lot of important interventions, depending also in what countries we are. But there are many countries, children do not have enough access to food and have well, they are not the basic material, they don't fulfill their basic material needs that will be key for their development. And sometimes, and even in terms of, if you look at it from an economic perspective, it's the loss is several times more than what countries in poor countries spend in health or education systems. So there's a big gap here that just doesn't make sense. So we need to make sure every children have access to quality nutrition, education, healthcare, social protection, and offer a financial support for populations at risk, such as poor or single parents family. And a very important theme is on trauma prevention, detection, and healing. So we just it's kind of a taboo in many of our societies, and we are just discovering how trauma, especially in childhood, are so widespread, and they have so negative impact on human flourishing, on individual flourishing, but also for the society as a result. And indeed, there are some research that shows that each dollar invested in childhood well-being can potentially generate $8 in returns for society. So here also there's a good economic case for that. And the fact that we are not addressing that, tapping into these opportunities, let's say, is just a testimony of how illiterate, I would say, our societies are in terms of psychology and this inner dimension. So another in education. So that's an interesting on the right side, we can see this graph from the World Education WISE from 2014. And they asked specialists, what skills will be more valuable in 2030? And they were clear in emphasizing personal skills, like our ability to interact with others, to make sound decisions, to manage your time effectively, etc., etc. So, an academic knowledge came only third. The fact is that knowledge evolves very quickly. It's widely now available online. It's accessible through artificial intelligence. So, and this artificial intelligence redefines the kind of value added we can have as humans. So there is definitely this recognition that how important personal development is. And so an education for being would support pupils' integral development. And when I say integral, I mean not only cognitive, but also physical and emotional in particular, and also spiritual, we could say, in terms of the expression of their authentic being and the cultivation of the best version of themselves. And indeed, we see a lot of relevant approaches that are developing quickly that embodies this new approach. With one of them is through the umbrella term positive education, which focus on helping children develop their well-being, develop their resilience, in particular through social emotional learning, teaching them to be more aware and know how to deal with their emotions, how to communicate, to manage conflicts with others, etc., etc. We have also character education or values education, when pupils reflect together on the values and how they apply in their life in the classroom. And we have cooperative learning. Classroom have often been a competitive space with grades, etc. Cooperative learning is a process by which pupils help each other to learn, and it's working very well. And more generally, there is this recognition that more and more we need personalized educational curricula where pupils autonomously frame their own learning path, and the teacher is rather there to support them rather than to teach them. And we have another example is the approach in terms of teaching in terms of topic-based. So instead of teaching, math, history, geography, we can also look at some specific questions, some specific topics. And as we inquire into them, we can learn from all these different disciplines. And that allows to cultivate systemic thinking, to show how everything is related and not siloed into artificial disciplines. So some example at scale. So more or less all of these approaches are part of the Finnish educating system, which is been recognized widely as an example for the world. And there are also the example of folkbildning that is presented in this very good book, The Nordic Secret, which shows how this, let's say, inner development focus has been promoted at scale in Nordic country in the second half of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th centuries, and arguably made a huge difference in terms of these countries' development, these countries which are now often said as the most evolved and the ones performing better in terms of social health and human well-being. So in the field of organization. So there's a lot we could say there. I'm just giving some example, and I don't want to be exhaustive. So an example here is this book from Frédéric Laloux, Reinventing Organizations, which was say like these what he called teal organizations are kind of the evolved the next stage for organizations and management, and it relies on three breakthroughs. The first one, the main one, maybe being self-management. So others have talked also about liberated companies, in which people are organized in self-managed small teams with very little, with no middle management, no boss, and little support from other corporate teams, you could say. And yeah, so that's self-management, and they are in these teams. Basically, people are able to take any decisions as long as they consult with people who would be impacted, or people who have the knowledge on that. So it's a very empowering system, which is working very well. The second one is wholeness, where people are inviting to bring the whole of themselves in the workplace, being able to be vulnerable. And then the key is to be able to build these safe and caring spaces at work, and so that people can bring the whole of themselves, and at the same time invest in personal development, so that people, especially because of self-management, people need to, processes are much more open, etc. So people need to communicate better, to solve conflicts, etc. So they invest a lot in personal development of their employees. And the last one is what Laloux called listening to evolutionary purpose. So indeed, he said that in these companies, the organization is often seen as a living entity, which has its own soul, we could say, and its own purpose. And rather than planning, which is increasingly difficult in such a complex world, people rather listen to where the organization wants to go. And its organization is seen as a living entity, also because of self-management. It's like each cell of this living entity constantly sense the environment and respond to it. So decision-making is completely decentralized. And so there is a constant adaptation like a living entity. And what is very interesting for us is that it is really based, this organization have a different perspective on human nature. And that's why they can allow self-management, for example. That means they don't need to control so much people. They rather believe people are fundamentally good and intrinsically motivated when they are given the enough responsibility to make their work meaningful. So here again, it's a completely different perspective on human nature that is at the basis of these management systems. And we see they are very powerful. We see great performance in the companies and organizations Laloux's analyzed, in particular because of employee engagement, which is so low in many organizations at the moment, because people are intrinsically motivated for their work. And also because of the collective intelligence that results from this management system, and the reduction in costs, because if you don't need to plan, to control people, to have middle management or supervision, or if there is no point to do internal politics, well, it saves a lot in cost and make work much more efficient. So Laluz developed some example. There is one on Birdsock, which is very interesting. It's a neighborhood nursing organization in the Netherlands, which 6 years after its creation in 2006, employed 2/3 of neighborhood nurses in the Netherlands. So it was a huge success. And basically because these sectors went into consolidation with larger companies and work specialization, bureaucratization of this organization, which means like nurses really lose the meaning of their work. They lose also the connection to their autonomy and the connection to their patients. And Birdsock have been by helping allowing these nurses to self-organize into groups of 10 or 12 and define their own work organization. They make their work much more meaningful and have much more autonomy in how they deal with their patients. And this result with, even from a health point of view, I mean, they spend, it has been estimated, they spend 40% less time while they have time to discuss, etc., with their patients, because it just works much better for the health, or the service is much better. They have time to connect as human beings. And at the end, because their patients' health is better, they need to spend less time and it costs less. It has been estimated that if the whole sector would go around following the same organization that Birdsock, it will save 2 billion euros to the Netherlands social or healthcare. Another approach, for example, what does that mean in terms of health? Here because especially in rich countries, the main issue for our health systems now are chronic disease. And because we have an aging population, we have healthcare that is becoming, because of technology, becoming always more expensive. The costs are no longer sustainable. And we realize that these chronic diseases are determined to a large extent by our lifestyles. And we need to empower people to take better care of themselves. But lifestyles are determined to a large extent by our mental health. And the mental health has a direct impact on our physical health that is more and more highlighted and recognized. And at the same time, indirect, because it's a major determinant of our lifestyles. So it's definitely a major public health issue that we are not dealing well with. We know that depression now has become the main source of invalidity in the world. And one in every 3 people will have a mental health problem during his life at the moment. So it has been, it's a major issue with important consequences, including economic consequences in terms of, people work less because of mental health. So, and we have treatments that work and can give positive social returns because of the economic costs associated with mental health. So it's just also incredible to recognize that only 1 in 3 people suffering from mental health in which country have access to treatment. It also shows, how unfamiliar it is for us to deal collectively with this inner dimension. We are not comfortable with that, and we lose these opportunities. And this mental health approach is a key part of what this new paradigm would look in medicine, which is called integrative medicine, an approach centered on prevention and well-being instead of disease. A focus on lifestyles and empowerment, the consideration of all the dimensions, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and the determinants, social, environmental, of health, and also the integration of conventional medicine with complementary therapies. Another example in the food and agricultural sector. So basically, we could be more healthy, we could be better, and the planet could be better at the same time if we were to adopt a planetary health diet that we can promote through public policies. And this diet is also, our diet is very linked to our mental health. First, you know, it's our diet impact our mental health. It has been shown that a Western diet has been associated with a smaller hippocampus, which is a very important part for brains, associated in memory, decision-making, etc. And by cultivating mental health, for example, through mindfulness-based interventions, we can promote healthy eating and treating eating disorders. In the way we produce our food also, we see clearly the need to move from industrial agriculture, which is very much embody what's wrong in these systems focused on economic growth, basically by having, you know, having to buy all the inputs rely on technology rather than the nature-based solutions, we could say. So here the new paradigm is agroecology, which works with nature instead of working against nature. So by cultivating soil health, synergies between different components of diverse production systems, organic fertilizer, biological control of pest and disease. So it's really working with nature and have a much more holistic view on farming, not only about, you know, monocultures and looking only at productions, but also how important is the way we farm for our health, public health, for the environment, and bringing all that together to optimize, you know, the different functions of nature. These are systems that are much more small scale also, and could allow for more people to be engaged in farming, could be also even in urban agriculture. And what's important there is that there is proven well-being, physical and mental health benefits of doing farming. So definitely something to promote. And there is also a wide variety of public policies to be able to promote agroecology. So in the field, that's a very important one, in the field of nature, recognizing the rights of nature, as numerous countries have already done. And this is a trend of, if you look at it from an historic lens, is basically widening. We have, at some point, women, children, and slaves had no rights. And now we are more and more countries that recognize the rights of nature. So it's a continuation of an historical process that of the widening of our circle of concern. So rights have been recognized by different countries through court rulings or legislations, rights to Mother Earth, to rivers, forests, mountains, specific animals. All of these add legal status of objects, but are now being recognized subjects of rights by different countries. So what's in really here is a paradigmatic change in how we relate to nature. And it's a core at the politics of being, which I said, recognize the rights of every being to be. And there it will, like for different rights, you have to find a balance between rights. For example, you have to find a balance between free speech and how do you call that? Some limits about not harming others through not, being disrespectful, something like that, unrespectful to others. So there we have, if people have rights, corporations have rights, but nature have rights also. Then comes very good questions, when we, let's say, want to build a dam or something. Do we really need this for human flourishing? Are there no other alternatives? What are we taking from nature? Is it balanced, or is it really important for us? So I think these are very good questions that recognizing the rights of nature will allow. And there have already been in 2010 a Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, which started like this: Mother Earth is a living being. Mother Earth is a unique, indivisible, self-regulating community of interrelated beings that sustains, contains, and reproduces all being. So I think this is a very wise approach to be allowed to recognize rights of nature as an important way to just protect us somehow, like we need to be wise enough to say, hey, we need to recognize these rights because we need these rights to be enforced for us to have a future also as part of this Earth community. Okay, and two last sectors, just some. So economy, that's a big one. So the first thing there is to have a new value system. So if we prioritize being, then we need a new value systems in which would mean like our ideal, and even the social recognition people would get would not be so much from their power, their fame, their money, but rather from their service to others and their, their wisdom, their inner flourishing. So we need a new value systems first for this new economy to be with new indicators. First, we need to satisfy our basic needs within planetary boundaries. So that is the image of the donuts economics from Relevance. And it's important that everyone has to access his basic needs because that's the basis for every human being to flourish. And we need to have a global Green New Deal. We are very aware that we are facing a very deep ecological crisis, and we need to invest right now into a transition to a low carbon, climate resilient economy. So there are different ways to do that, and we can use also the transformation of our monetary systems to do that, especially the creation of the public creation of money. Rather, right now the money is created by private actors, by banks for activities that are profitable, but we could also have governments issuing money for their own needs and to invest in education, health, or environment. This Green New Deal, for example. We need to reform intellectual property rights that maintains that are not suited with the digital economy, and that really embody this scarcity mindset, while the digital economy would allow a lot of abundance. For example, there is a study that has shown that we could multiply by 4 the social value of music if we make it available to everyone. And we could, instead of having to pay for them, so, like platforms like Spotify or something, we could fund that and pay artists similarly, but through other means, like a tax, for example, and we could multiply the value for the Netherlands by 4 in doing that, with artists receiving the same and maybe more, because we would cut also in transaction cost. Really relocalizing the economy, including through local currencies. And because, globalization, this is because we compete through a global economy. If we want a more ambitious environmental and social bottom line, this is a barrier, because we feel like we'll be less competitive because we live in a globalized economy. So the importance of localizing economy, also for many different reasons, including being able to have more strengthened social capital and communities, democratizing economic systems with new form of governance for companies, giving more incentives to companies that work for the common good. And now there are some legal entities that are designed to such purpose. And also a focus on reducing inequalities, because they are just so unhealthy and lead to negative social outcomes, as science has shown. And this could be achieved including through a guaranteed minimum income. So if people feel they have a guaranteed minimum income, then they are more able to find a job, because as a way to realize themselves, to and to be of service to the world, to bring out the best of themselves. So that could be also part of this transition. Here is a graph that shows very clearly how income inequality is linked to the more inequality we have. This is in OECD countries. We can see the US on the top right. The more where income inequality are the greatest, and where social problems like even life expectancy, education, infant mortality, homicides, teenage births, trust, obesity, mental illness, etc., are much. These problems are much higher in the US. So we see a clear correlation between social problems and the level of income inequality. The last chapter on governance. So we see that our democratic systems are now in crisis, and this is because they are rooted in this logic of competition, or we can call adversarial democracy, when political parties fight for power, and which result right now in the problem of polarization and the incapacity to deal with the long term and inefficiency in general of our political systems. So there, I think that's really an interesting chapter. I enjoyed a lot writing. Here I've mentioned this title of this book, Intelligent Governance from for the 21st Century, which has been written by Berggren and Gardels. And what they have done, interestingly, was to ask some of the best political scientists in Asia on the one hand, and in Europe and in the Western world on the other hand, what would be an ideal system of governance. And interestingly, these two groups of researchers have converged with similar proposal, one that balance the qualities of democracy, like in the West, about popular control, and the quality of systems like in China, which they call meritocracy, based on competence, where the learned are those that take decisions. And funny enough, they come up with this proposal in terms of ideal governance systems that is very similar to those proposed by the Baha'i. The Baha'i is a religion that has been born in the 19th century in Iran, and his leader, Baha'u'llah, developed this doctrine of progressive revelation. So he said in every time, in every space, there have been some teachers for humanity that have allowed give teaching for these different societies to evolve according to their own needs. And he realized that each time, and he showed himself as kind of coming after Moses, Jesus, Mohammed, etc. And he realized that every time what is blocking is a clergy that doesn't want to recognize the next stage of the revelation. So when he designed the administration of his religion, he paid a lot of attention to this design and say that could be a template of governance that the world, to be refined, that the world could choose freely to adopt at some point. And there are very striking resemblance of what the best political scientists now recently have come with in terms of this pyramidal structure when delegates, representatives are elected at the local level, and then they come together, they get to know each other, they are able to have more constructive discussion probably than what we have now, and be able to recognize who can be the wisest to represent them at the next level. Also, the fact that they use what is called a single transferable voting, through which you vote to a number of people, and when the first has already enough vote to be elected, then the votes goes for the second choice, etc., third, fourth choice, etc. So this also avoids, polarization and ensure representation of the whole community. And we find that in the Baha'is and in this proposal. And the last thing, also the collective exercise of power. So these are not only one individual, but council that come to this together to decide. So yeah, the future of governance is could be also this ideal template that is a deepening of democracy through greater participation, to kind of bypass also the negative role that political parties have at the moment, and a balance between competence and popular control. So there are a lot of examples of direct and deliberative democracy that works very well and can respond to the challenge of polarization and how the public debate has become so inefficient, and it can be integrated to representative democracy. So I propose also a wisdom council and a better regulation of social media, which have been very nocive for our democracy. So this wisdom council could review and advise on proposed policy, conduct the necessary research and debate, and inform the public And it will be above all responsible, to making sure that these politics of being, the evolution of our societies, is being attended, and through proposed policies, through debates, through having governments explaining how their policies intend to respond to these priorities, etc. Okay, these were the 9 sectors I've developed in this book. Just to conclude, almost. So when we developed, we at the same time become more universal, and at the same time we become more ourselves. So the values of the politics of being are universal, and they can provide the ground for the world unification, and what Léopold Senghor, the former president of Senegal, called a civilization of the universal, in which every nation can contribute to, with their own genius, and bring the best of themselves to contribute to this civilization of the universal. On the right side, we see a map, a cultural map of the world. Ingelart, who has been involved in this work, say social cultural change is past dependent, and cultural heritages are remarkably enduring. So indeed, basically, past dependent is where you go depends from where you come from. So that means each nation needs to reconnect to its own wisdom. And most often it's rooted in the story of interbeing, of the need to be a responsible member of one's community, to define its own version of the good life. When we are if we all pursue economic growth, we have one single metric, GDP, that says, basically who is the best. In this politics of being, every nation needs to define, what is being, what is a good life for them, and the politics of being as a pathway towards this good life. And each nation needs to reconnect to its own soul and perform, recapitulate its history, which in many cases has been involved a lot of trauma and discontinuity, including, thinking in particular in terms of colonization, etc. So they need to reconnect to themselves, do their collective psychological assessments, what are their psychological features, their qualities, and also their challenges, and rediscover their own purpose. So as a conclusion, healing trauma is often what impedes us to be, what impedes us to work from this story of interbeing instead of this story of separation. So we need to heal traumas at the individual level and also at the collective level as a gateway to being. As I mentioned, wisdom and science are the pillars of the politics of being, and that makes a lot of sense. In this book, I've tried to develop a strong rationale, understandable by decision makers and average citizens, provide a simple but integrative framework that can integrate all relevant thoughts and initiatives, and offer concrete policy recommendation based on existing examples, easily replicable. And with this, I intend to define probably a new field of research and frame a new field of research and action. So it's a collective endeavor. So your support is very much welcome. You can connect with us with this website or the social media. And I wanted to, there is this quote from John Lennon: "The dream you dream alone is only a dream. A dream you dream together is reality." So thank you very much. The book will be released on January 22nd. It's already available on pre-order from now onwards. Now, the ebook in particular, in the coming days, also a print version that will be, that you can order now. It could be a good gift for Christmas, etc. And you can receive it on January 22nd. The book comes with a foreword by Mathieu Ricard, which calls it a profound, insightful, extensively researched, sensitive, and much needed essay, which provides a precious roadmap for traveling together towards a better world. Thank you. So now maybe we can open a space for questions and answers. So maybe you can raise hands, or we can take also maybe just maybe have some breathing, because I feel like there's been a lot of me talking, a lot of information. So maybe just invite you just to share the silence and the presence for a moment and enjoy. I can enjoy finally watching you, who came to respond to this call, and you know, eager to know, I guess, more about the politics of being. And if possible, it'd be great to see also your face with a camera, and can put it on. It's great before we have a sharing together. And I see Paul that would like to talk. Thank you, Paul. Over to you.
Oh, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. And before anything else, I'd like to thank Thomas so much for the presentation this morning on his upcoming book, and also for the tremendous amount of research and thought and consideration he gave over many years to writing this book. I think it's a very, very valuable book that's necessary for all of us to reflect on very deeply, and also to carry forward into the future. It seems to me I've had the opportunity of reading most of Thomas's book already through a variety of sources, and I think what he's accomplished in this book is you know, bringing us up to date on developments that are taking place in many different areas, and consolidating all that information, and shining a great deal of light on a viable path for the future that in the end does come down very much to the need for all of us in the world as a whole to move progressively from thinking about having more to being more, and all of the implications that exist in that across the board. My concern really, and I've set this out in a book that I wrote called Revolution or Renaissance, making the transition from an economic age to a cultural age, which I think is very much in the domain that Thomas is also talking about, is the very real and pressing problem we have with politics in general, which is so related to Thomas's book and concern, and governments. What I've tried to do in examining in detail in Revolution or Renaissance is to examine how the economic age developed from Adam Smith in '76 up to the present, and attempt to do as an objective an assessment of this book as I could manage, and then reflect on where we might go from the economic age. And the argument in the book is that we should move into a cultural age, which I think is very consistent with what Thomas is saying, and reflects very broadly and deeply the need for a kind of cultural evolution that's more and more recognized in the world today. The problem, in my view, and why I think we have to give particular attention to the existing state of politics and government, and where this should head in the future, is how deeply governments are embedded in the economic age at present, as I call it, and how difficult it is going to be for us to extricate ourselves from the economic age in order to move into a cultural age. And one of the reasons for this is that I think governments, as we know, and as Thomas has pointed out, have been deeply, deeply committed to the economic theories of economists from Adam Smith through Ricardo, and especially Karl Marx, Simon Kuznets, Marshall, Jevons, and so on. But we are at the point where the governments have been telling citizens, first in the Western world and now in all parts of the world, that it's all about the economy. And I think, you know, most of us have bought into that kind of argument and have become totally preoccupied with perceiving and thinking about the world in economic terms and committing ourselves to an economic worldview. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for governments, for international organizations, and especially for organizations like UNESCO and the World Trade Organization and so on, to move out of this economic worldview and into another kind of worldview, regardless of whether it's a cultural worldview, a spiritual worldview, a technological worldview, or any other type of worldview. And I hope that it might be possible through Thomas's book to really give this much more attention. And it's really the attention on how deeply we are immersed in the economic age at the present time, and exactly how and why it's so necessary and so important to move out of this situation and into a future situation that encompasses many of the values and ideals that Thomas has mentioned, and how we can move governments from where they are now to what Thomas is talking about in the years and decades ahead. We all know in the final analysis that this is all, now very much become an urgent and pressing problem, and I hope we can give full consideration to that fact in going forward into the future, and how much light Thomas has shed on the importance of doing that. He set out a path for us, and let's really focus our attention on how that path can be realized and what is required by governments and the political process generally to realize the ideals and the directions that Thomas has set out in his wonderful book.
Thank you, Paul, and I look also forward to read your books. It's been a pleasure to exchange in the past weeks and months around respective work. Thank you very much. I see Dominique has raised the hand.
Yes, Thomas, first of all, I would like to thank you for for this amazing presentation you've done. And it's really great. And you raised a few topics which are really critical for civilization and let's face it, for the survival of mankind. Paul actually raised some interesting points as well when he was speaking. And I think the question which came to me when he was speaking was, how stable do we think the present economic and political structures are in the world? If we feel that they are actually stable, then okay, they could carry on for a long time. But let's not forget that we got challenges coming, you know, within the next 10, 20 years. And the number one challenge, actually, strangely enough, will be a challenge that politicians are actually championing right now, which is technology. The advance of artificial intelligence, for example, and robotics will actually be a factor which will be undermining the present social and political structure of societies. We are going to be faced with, you know, loss of jobs on a massive scale. No countries in this world is ready right now to face this tragedy. Because as you said, you know, the whole economic, it's all about economy. It's not about being, it's about resources, using resources, creating more wealth and so on. This is a dead end. And the technology is going to show it to us, we like it or not. So it's interesting because when Thomas was talking in his last one of his slides about the political structure, the new political structure. One thing that was very apparent to me is that, and for that I'd like to paraphrase a late philosopher called Jiddu Krishnamurti, who said that a nation is a violence to humankind. And the question really is, in a new world we'll be moving in, can we afford to have the same social and political structures? Can we afford to have artificial nations? The new world will not have nations. The concept of nations will not exist at all in the new world. It cannot. We need to implement a totally new political infrastructure, which will be based on humans and triggered, powered from bottom up, not from the top bottom. So this is quite an important point. And I think we, in the next 10, 20 years, we are going to see things which have never happened before in our civilization. We are going to see an overturn of the old values, of the old models. If we don't, and I do appreciate that we have many challenges, not just political, we got environmental challenges, which we need to address, and hopefully will be addressed, because if we don't address them, let's face it, all this discussion may become, well, irrelevant. So there are some very strict aspects, like environment, we need to address, but the social and political structures are going to collapse very quickly. And technology will be one factor. So I would like to know, Thomas, and maybe Paul as well, what are your views on this?
Thank you. Thank you, Dominique. Maybe I suggest, I've seen Louise also has a hand raised. Let's hear about Louise, and then maybe I can say a word.
Yes. Thank you so very much. I really enjoyed that. It was just a kind of a tour de force through what we know about where the entire development arrived at. So it marks describes that point of departure we're sitting at the moment. And thoroughly done, and congratulations, Thomas. That was great work. I have a bit of when listening to all that, I had a bit of an unease at the earlier part of the presentation, and I'm sure you're able to dissolve that. And that was going back to values, going to universal values, and reintegrating the formerly excluded. Now, if we look at science, all that has to do with the existentiality of love, with the spiritual, is excluded currently. And re-inviting that to grow a shared understanding on the whole is a necessity that I heard out of your presentation very well. So my unease, however, is to what extent does that facilitate a process between those, well, how shall we call them? The religious traditions in the world who have a track record of not really agreeing with each other, or to be violently in disagreement with each other. And hasn't that been a part of the pacifying decades or centuries since the Enlightenment, that the quarrel of religion was sort of put to the outside? So you see what conundrum I'm sitting with. So we all agree of it needs to be re-invited, but how do we do that without unleashing the demons which we so nicely had kept at bay for the last, let's say, 300 years?
Thank you, Luis. That's That's a great question. I don't know if anyone like to say something or ask a question, and then I can try to answer some of these. David, see your hand raised.
Thank you for your stunning work. I was wondering if in your book you have reflected about the question of outer space, because now we have a lot of projects coming up, like using the moon as a mining resource or asteroids, and now we are thinking to going in Mars. We can assume we are already considering this planets or outer space like assets, like we did before in this red extractive way of thinking. So what about the governance of something, of just asking the question, do we have the right to go over there and to use it as a resource? And for me, it raises a lot of ethical, political questions we have to resolve at a global level, and with wisdom and science. So I was wondering if you have reflected, and I was wondering if you know about the Integral European Conference, and if you have applied for sharing your work over there. I think it will be a great place, and they will love to offer you a spot, maybe for a keynote.
Which conference you said, David?
Integral European Conference. It is Hungary in May 22. So please check out. They have a website and you can apply online. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Right, thank you, David. I will try to say a word on what has been said. On outer space, I don't develop that much. I'm focusing on the Earth, but recognizing, we're talking about recognizing the rights of Mother Earth. So maybe we should also recognize the rights of Sister Moon. So yeah, I've not developed that too much, but obviously, it's like, instead of, it's like an escape, like we maintain this kind of extractive mindset patterns, and rather the invitation with the politics of being is rather than escape, rather look inside and see, that these patterns are inside of us and they are harmful to us. So the environmental crises we are facing, we need to fix it, not only because that's a way we can survive, but also because it's a manifestation of what's going wrong inside. So yeah, on Luis, on your point, so yeah, obviously, there is this, the way modernity has developed is really through secularism, and say, let's keep the religions out of the public debate, because otherwise it's always conflicting, and the state should be kind of value neutral. And the states, governments, that's why also shy away from, emphasizing about more this value-based approach. But I think it's time to recognize that it's time to have a more mature discussion on, we could call it spirituality. Also recognize that it's not true that the public space is value neutral. There is a great influence of commercialism. It's rooted in the story of separation. So you can't escape from values, basically. So let's rather be able to discuss it and have this more mature approach. I have a definition, as you see, like of spirituality, which basically is the same than being, like cultivating, becoming who we are and cultivating the best in us. And I think these values are universal. Then there is a question maybe like of trade-offs between values. And there I think the answer is simply wisdom and learn from what does that mean inside each of us, because wise people are able to make this kind of balance within themselves. And that should be a starting point to think about what this balance means in society. Regarding to me, I value religion for their spiritual dimension, and also recognizing they have, created also a lot of problems in history. So if we approach that more as, okay, let's discuss, let's have this conversation. We can keep the more dogmatic beliefs, etc., but we can have this agreement on these values. There is how do we say, the global introduction to a global ethics that have been drafted already some 25 years ago. So I think we can really agree on this kind of on putting forward the values that I'm proposing with this book. And yes, I mean, we need to have. The world is becoming more religious, indeed. That's a surprising fact I've discovered because of demography. So all Western societies are becoming less religious, but we are becoming less. And people where demography is growing is being still very religious. So the world is becoming more religious. So we will not be able to move into this new paradigm without religions turning toward themselves and making this making their own evolution, or really reconnecting to what is being able to separate the good thing in them and things that are maybe not so good. And we have an interreligious movement, we have an interspiritual movement that is growing, and that can bring science in, because we can have this. I mean, I think in this book I've tried to articulate a methodology in which spirituality can dialogue with science for a more mature conversation, and I think that's the kind of conversations we need among religions, between religions, and between the citizens. And so I think there is, we have set up a bit because we put basically decided to set aside a bit religious, spiritual concerns from public life because of the conflicts, religious conflicts we have happened in the past. But I think now that we need to bring back these subjects, we need to be able to open this space, and as you say, that can create some challenges. But I think this is, there are also, I think it's time now, and we can have a more mature conversation between these different religions. In terms of, maybe just a word in terms of what Dominique said, I mean, as we say, there's a lot, the world is becoming very complex, very disruptive, etc. So in that kind of cases, I think the better investment we could do is in inner development, as I kind of explained in the part on education. So, and I would not completely agree that, I mean, I mentioned like nations, I think, will remain important, cultures, etc. So that, it's I don't believe like we'll become every completely homogeneous, and as I said, one world goes together with many nations. As we develop, we become more universal and more uniquely ourselves. So the two goes together. But I understand what you mean, Dominique. Also, I think maybe it was not the, and maybe just a word on what Paul shared with the difficulties to work with governments. So my work is called Politics of Being. I've proposed this a lighting system that works in many sectors that embody this perspective. these systems can be implemented by the private sector, by civil society, not only governments. I think we need to really change our political institutions, as I mentioned also in this presentation, to allow better decision making and the inefficiency of governments going together with, you know, so much embedded in the interest of the economic age, as Paul calls it. So yeah, I think just some reaction. It's already we have been there for 2 hours together. Maybe I'll just open a space if someone wants to say the last word. Maybe someone that has not spoken, and then I would be happy to share with you the video trailer of this book, a 4-minute video that I will start to promote next week in social media. So, and I hope you'll be able also to share very widely. It's an inspiring video that can complement very well this more theoretical a bit, or mind-based, let's say, or I don't know how to say that, discussion.
Thomas, I don't know if I can say a word, but I found your book really, the presentation of the book really interesting, really inspiring, and especially now with what's going on in Guadeloupe. I don't know if all of you are aware of what's going on in Guadeloupe, but this would be a great lab to try and see if your proposals can do something for us, because in the French nation, inside the French nation, we have a territory where there are a lot of challenges on health, education, even spiritual aspects. And we were a lot pointed out as people with a lot of superstitions. Some people would say this is spirituality. And well, again, I think this would be a great lab to try and find another paradigm for to face those challenges. So, well, again, very inspiring, and I'd love to see that put into our government's hands, and I hope they will do something with it.
Thank you, Nay. I look forward to maybe work with you on that. I think that, as I said, now there's a long history also of trauma and misunderstanding, and that needs to be probably looked at much more, approached much more consciously, to be able to be able to develop or let a better future be for, in particular, in places like Guadeloupe. Yeah, thank you.
So, Thomas, you may clarify one thing. Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. Cultural identity is fundamental. But I would say that a nation, it doesn't represent cultural identity. It doesn't represent all the cultures in one country. In fact, look, for example, in France, the Basque, with how they fit in France, and how they would probably feel they would prefer to be separated from France. The same with Catalonia in Spain, the same with probably the Welsh in the UK and the Scots and so on. So cultural identity doesn't equate nations. Yes, for cultural identities, totally, but it has to be on a smaller scale. On a bigger scale, a nation doesn't work. And that creates a lot of frictions and a big divide. Catalonia felt that it was abused by the Spanish government. The Scots right now are feeling that they've been abused by the British government, and so on and so on. So here we are. So yes, I agree with you, but the notion, the concept of a nation, to me, is a crime against humanity.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Dominique. I think we think the same. Maybe we use nation to me, and not only at the national level, but also we could talk about the Corsican nation, the Catalonian nation, and that's how I use it. Thank you for this clarification.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's been wonderful to be with all of you. Thanks a lot, and maybe we can finish with the video trailer that we can share with you before just saying goodbye. Thank you very much. I appreciate very much your support and being in this special day with you. Thank you all. I've shared the link. I will share it next week. I hope it will reach a lot of people and we can make it happen together. It was such a privilege to have you all today for this important day. So I look forward to connecting more. Thanks a lot. Bye.